Support for this podcast comes from the patrons at patreon.com/FMLFPL. Okay, welcome to the first Fireside chat of the season. This is Alon. Today I'm joined by Anthony Dabbundo from the Action Network. Anthony, what's happening?
Enjoying the off season. It's way too short to begin with, and this year with the Women's World Cup, we've been busy with that. So a little bit, later than usual start for me on Premier League prep, but always keeping up with the transfer news and generally have a good idea, probably by the end of the last season, who I might be lower or higher on.
Yeah.
Going into the next one. And there's already a couple teams where I'm just like, yeah, I'm not really buying the hype. So
when is Wonder Goal back? When is the Action Network's soccer podcast back in action?
So we haven't done any official dates yet on like when we're going to record, but the season starts August 11th. Yeah. So we will be back probably the first week of August. Okay. July 31st, August 1st, 2nd, 3rd, kind of that week. With our big preview, and then we'll probably have you back on for our little point total draft last year.
I'm in.
We finished an even 10-10 last year as a group, so
yeah,
we drafted all 20 teams, and it was fun. And a lot of them, like 3 or 4, came down to the last day, so it was entertaining.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll do that again, and I think a lot of today is just going to be preliminary. There's so much that can change. There's still so much transfer window left, so we'll see what happens. But let's just start with the title. I mean, I think it's the logical place to start. City are favored as always. Any outsiders that you like this year? I mean, last year it was City favorites, Liverpool, the only relevant close team to being, second favorite. I think they were plus 250 last year. Now no team is near that. Arsenal's plus 500. Liverpool plus 750, United plus 900, and then, long shots after that. Anyone you like?
I often don't bet the Premier League title race preseason just because I think it can change so much, and it's such a long year. I thank Arsenal for taking that huge lead built on a lot of flimsy late goals. Because it enabled me to bet City repeatedly throughout the month of March.
You were hammering City on the podcast.
It was on our show. It was like, all right, well, it's a good week to add more money on City. It was just like Arsenal's probably not going to hold this. They don't have the depth. And it did catch up with them. And now I think Arsenal, if they had been priced at 8, 9, 10 to 1, I would have been interested in them. But at 5 to 1, there's just not a ton of value in that, given how much of a leap this team already took.
Yeah.
I just don't know if they get enough out of Jesus Havertz to really keep up at the top. And if the defense is going to, be more like the first half of the season when they were elite, but it was kind of like they can't really keep up this level of production, or if it's going to be more like the second half where they were leaking goals left and right against, superior competition. I just can't get that Liverpool game out of my head where Arsenal were completely played off the park. And that game plus the City game, it feels like if you buy Arsenal at 5 to 1 to win the league, you're almost buying them at the peak of their value. They're never going to be lower than that in the era of City, dominance. But then there's also City. There has to be some natural regression, natural kind of fatigue from what happened at the end of last season. And we talked about this on our show. City was not the same team that final month, and they really fell off. I didn't think they looked good against United. I didn't think they played well at all against Inter in the final. De Bruyne gets hurt, so he's going to miss the start of the season. Gundogan leaves, and we haven't really heard much in terms of transfer business on them replenishing the talent. A lot of the last year was kind of consolidating their best team and going away from the top guys. Now it's well, who are the top guys behind Grealish and Haaland right now? And so I'm a little bit questioning of them.
Yeah, Gvardiol, I guess, is the big rumor, and that's probably going to be, their huge £100 million guy. But yeah, it's a different team. I agree with you that they didn't look the sharpest on down the stretch. But yeah, I totally agree with you on Arsenal. I feel like I'm going to be an Arsenal downer this whole episode, and I'm going to get a lot of hate for it. But that's just, I don't know where I'm at. But yeah, I mean,
the big outside of the big trendy team that had the great upstart season the year before just gets to the top of their market, and then it's like regression hits. And we saw this with Chelsea. Remember when Chelsea won the Champions League and everybody was like, well, you can get Chelsea 20-1, 16-1. Now they're down to 8-1 to win the league. It's like, well, yeah, they had a great 4-month run under Tuchel. They won a knockout tournament, but they don't have any goals. They're not going to score enough.
Yeah.
And then they ended up, where'd they finish? 4th?
Yeah. If you take Arsenal plus 500 now, I mean, you're basically betting that City are going to start really slow and Arsenal are going to start really hot, and that number is going to go the other way. Whereas you can probably get Arsenal plus 1,000 or more, later in the season, halfway through the season, something like that.
I'll be honest, I don't have them as the second best team in the league.
So who do you have?
Your boys.
Hey, let's go.
I just think that they had a down year. There was a lot of Murphy's Law shit that went wrong with Liverpool last year. You lived through it. Every set piece going in against them, they couldn't defend set pieces. Yes, Van Dijk gets a year older, but I think it was just kind of an in-between moment. We forget how much Liverpool went all in that season before, and there was always going to be a natural letdown from chasing the quadruple, from having everybody go to the max as much as they did. And you saw kind of the natural regression of that in the first half of the season. But once they made that little tactical tweak to put Trent in the midfield, I thought they improved defensively, and all of their numbers took a real step forward defensively, whether it was ball winning and ball retention and kind of pressing success. And then Liverpool finished the season, right? You just take the raw expected goal differential, and they were 1/10 of a goal worse than Arsenal for the whole season. Now, if you watch the games, you would never imagine that. But Liverpool getting McAllister, I think, is a bigger deal than maybe we're realizing, just because of his role. And he was Brighton's most important player last year by pretty much any metric you look at. So, I think they've had a decent start to the summer window here. And we forget, Arsenal closed on the road at Liverpool as a pick'em. If they had played that game in May, I think Liverpool would have been a solid favorite at home. So I just don't really have a huge gap. I think Liverpool is the slightest of margins better. And I also think Newcastle's not that far behind in terms of their ability, because of just how dominant they were. I mean, if you look at just the second half of the season, which I know Arsenal started to fall off, so you're kind of catching Arsenal kind of at the bottom as they started to, fall down the table a little bit.
You're slicing the cake the way you want it.
Right. But if you just take a post-World Cup world.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big slice. That's the thing.
Yeah,
I've done the same, but it's half the season. It's more than half the season.
And Liverpool was plus 0.73 per 90. Arsenal was plus 0.65. Newcastle was the second best team. They were plus 1 per 90. That number is impressive, especially when you consider that it was when Isak was really finally healthy, and really featured more than Wilson. Not that Wilson didn't also score a bunch of goals, but Isak's creativity and kind of his ability really shown. So I don't think there's a huge gap between the Liverpool, Newcastle, Arsenal contingent. And so, maybe Newcastle at 16.
So you like Newcastle, it sounds like, for, just if we're picking a long shot, I mean, they're plus 1,600. It's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, they would be my pick, just because I don't really see a lot of holes. They probably need another wide forward for me to really be okay, now they have the attacking depth and firepower.
Yeah, they're trying to get Harvey Barnes, maybe. Yeah. Well, I mean, this transitions right into Golden Boot, right? Which I think is also part of the discussion with City maybe regressing, is that Haaland is basically his first ever season fit. And neither of us were high on Haaland for the Golden Boot in this episode last season. And part of that was, well, he never stays fit. He's probably played 20 games, 25 games. And, 50 million goals later, here we are. And he's a massive favorite for the Golden Boot. I'm still sort of interested in going somewhere else and basically betting on an injury. I mean, he's missed more matches every season of his career than last year. And, his over-under is 29.5. And I'm just I don't know. I'll just bet on an injury, right? And I think that what you said earlier also about, Liverpool's season after they played, what did they play? 65, 70 games, going for the quadruple, etc. I feel I'm sure you used to play fantasy football, fantasy NFL. Maybe you still do. But there was the old thing where if a running back got 300 carries, you're supposed to avoid them. They're going to have they're going to fall off. I feel like there's something in that with soccer. It just hasn't been written about yet, with like a number of minutes, number of matches, no time off, etc., where I expect some sort of regression. And I just, unless they're just injecting him with something or whatever's going on at City, I don't know. But I just find it to be I would find it to be very weird if he spent basically no time injured again this season.
Yeah, I agree. And you kind of saw the effects of the long season, I thought, in the last month. He was not the same. The shot production per 90 was down. The goals kind of dried up a little bit. And again, he still is, because of his style, as good as he is at generating shots and great shots, he still is a little bit of a product of a system, because he's not creating for others. He's not ball progressing. He's just the best in the world at getting on the end of everything and finishing it. And so with that nature, if City regresses around him, he will suffer more than I think other top strikers will. Now, Haaland has cost me a lot of money in the last year because, I would bet a lot of, say, well, City's obviously the best team in the league, but are they this good? Are they this good? And they were. But I think that, in the Golden Boot market, the first name that came up was Isak for me at 35-1.
Isak, interesting.
I don't know if he can like stay healthy enough.
Also, while Wilson is healthy, who also has his injury problems, I mean, he's still sort of the main man and the guy on pen. So going into the season, I don't like it off the bat. But what do you like about Isak?
I just like that, he came into the league and was getting, 10 goals and 16 90s. In a team that I think has room for upward growth as an attack, and a team that I think, we talked about playing from ahead. I think we tweeted about this a few times, like just how good they were once they get in that game state. But 10 goals and 16 90s, decently backed up by the numbers, 0.6 goals per 90, 0.5 XG per 90. It's not going to win you the Golden Boot, but like, could he take a step forward at age 22 going into his age 23 season? I've seen, less heralded players take leaps like that. When you just go down the board, though, like Kane 6-1, Salah plus 750, like not really good enough for me to go against Haaland. I think Nunez will have that season, but if he's not on pens, because Salah is, I don't really want him. Like same thing with like Son at 35-1, and I'm selling him. I'm selling Rashford. I know he just had a career year, but a lot of it was built on air. Finishing air and kind of just like being the best finisher in the world for a 2-month period.
Also not on pens.
Generally, right. So he won't be. He took some pens, right? It was.
He took maybe 2-3 years ago. He took some pens, but I think Bruno is like for sure on pens again. Back to being the guy,
and they probably should be. So there's like trying to find who's going to be on pens for the team. It's pretty important. Yeah, Rashford didn't take a pen last year. That's interesting. So Bruno only took 2, but they only had 3. So it's kind of wild. But if you look at just in general, like the market, like if United goes and gets somebody like an Osimhen, then I'm intrigued. I wonder what he would open. I don't think it's going to happen though. And Kunku 25-1, no thanks. Just kind of think the Bundesliga tax will hit him a little bit. I love Chris, but he's not going to be in an explosive enough team. So you look around the board, like the Wilson Isak thing. I wish only one of them played for Newcastle, and then I'd bet them. But
I'm curious about Kane and Mo. Why you think those numbers aren't good enough? Because basically, what I'm thinking is, if you're betting against Haaland, you're betting on an injury, and so if you're betting on an injury, then I just want someone who's on pens, 90 every game. And 20 plus goals. Like, who can get to 20 plus goals? Because that's good enough to win a Golden Boot a lot. And both of them are, as consistent as can be. And both of them have better numbers than last year, obviously, because of Haaland.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a good point. You could convince me into betting Harry Kane. Again, I just think that the thing, although there is the ever looming January thing, which I don't think would happen, but could happen.
Could.
Kane just like consistently healthy the last three years, really. On the pens, in a really bad Tottenham team, still got to 30 last year. We know he's going to finish over his XG, and so not that I look at underlying number, like not that I say like I'm going to ignore underlying numbers, but with Kane, like the track record is the track record now. So yeah, I see your point on that. I don't usually bet the Golden Boot market because that's just like for me. It's like I'm tying up a lot of money in a market that I think is pretty volatile, and unless Haaland gets hurt, he probably wins it. So if he does get hurt, Kane would be the name for me.
I just think it's fun, you know.
A little bit with Salah about the age profile with him.
Yeah, it's getting old.
A little bit of a decline in the numbers. I know this became like an ongoing bit between us last year because I said I'm not putting Salah in my FPL team. And I don't know much about FPL, but Salah ended up 19 and 12, and it was like the first half of the season he wasn't scoring any goals.
He didn't do anything.
I was taking my victory lap, but some of the dribbling numbers did go down. But then I was informed that FBref changed how they calculate the dribbling numbers, and I was like,
because they switched to Opta,
yeah, there was a clear decline in some of the numbers across the board for Mo last year.
Yeah,
I just think like age, in his age 30 year now going to 31 year, it's like, well, have we seen the best of Mo already? I would say the answer is probably.
Yeah. Yeah, the other like very long shots would be Ollie Watkins. Again, it's similar to your Jesus shout of last season where it's like we know he's an average finisher. I just need him to get lucky one season. And again, this all relies on Haaland getting hurt. So there's not even a shout if he doesn't get hurt. And then Julian Alvarez. I mean, again, if Haaland gets severely hurt and he just starts 25 games somehow or something like that, sure, he could win it. And he's plus 4,000. So, I don't know, something there.
Yeah, I just don't really see the huge upside for Watkins in that team.
Yeah.
Even last year, he's like below, he's 0.43 goals per 90 last year. You look at like his track record, I don't really ever see him going higher than that. Whereas somebody like Isak, who is 35-1, could take that kind of next leap forward.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. Has the shots, has the XG, has the explosiveness.
Isak was top 10 goals per 90 last year. At age 22.
I like it.
90. So I just don't know what the Wilson situation is. They playing them together?
The thing, like, I know because FPL, I got completely screwed by this, but in the matches where they started together, Isak was kind of wide left, and Callum was down the middle, and his XG and his shots fell off a cliff when he played there.
Right.
He was much more like creator, like bring the ball into the box kind of guy, like dribble the ball into the box kind of guy.
And that's the thing with his skill set too, which I think gets him on the field more, but may not get him goals all the time. It's just like his creativity with the ball at his feet is probably his best asset.
Yeah.
Like you look at just like his FBref page, like progressive passes, progressive carries, take-ons, progressive passes received.
Yeah, monster.
All of them are like his, the little bars are all, green, and that's always been his strength. Whereas Wilson is more of a pure poacher type. Yeah. So you're not going to get the level of production from the wide area. So you're going to play the two of them together. I mean, that's a fun group though.
Yeah. I mean, Wilson might be the shout, right? You just need him to stay fit. If he can just play like
do it.
Yeah, until he does one time, right? Like that's what we're betting on. It's like a long shot. Yeah. I mean, we
31. Like
it's very unlikely. I'm not saying it's like a sure thing at all, but 35-1, I don't know, might be something. But anyway, let's go back to some team stuff. Let's go top 4, which should be really, really competitive this year. I mean, all the European places are going to be really competitive. City, we don't have to talk about. They're minus 2,000, which I don't think I've ever seen for top 4. But then, I mean, it's Arsenal and Liverpool tied at minus 175. Man United next, minus 140. Newcastle, Chelsea a little bit outside that. And then, some longer shot teams. Anything you see there?
Yeah, give me team 5 and 6. I think that the market is kind of making there a bigger gap than there actually is between Newcastle, Chelsea, United, Arsenal, and Liverpool. And so, at plus 130, you can find out there on Newcastle to make top 4. That's probably the favorite bet that it's actually the only bet that I've made in the new Premier League season. It's just that, like, the upward potential of a January is always there. Like, how do they decide they want to spend their money, which we know they have money for days.
Unlimited.
the defense made real improvements and it was sustainable. There was a period last year where I was betting against Newcastle, kind of like around the World Cup break, where I was saying like, well, Wilson's kind of banged up and Isak hasn't really been bet in, and so where are the rest of the goals coming from? Like, there's no way Almiron keeps this up, and like they were scoring early in every game, and it was really helping their numbers because of how they were playing. But they would get stuck. They kept getting bogged down in these draws where it was like 0-0, 1-1, 0-0, 1-1 forever, and they don't really play aggressively. With Isak, Wilson, Joe Linton getting, adding some goals, like this team now all of a sudden, and Guy Moraes, of course, has enough depth for me to believe. And it kind of comes down to me being just a general skeptic in Arsenal and United. Because United, as currently constructed, was a really overrated team last year. Everybody kind of ate up the
Ten
Hag, magic of how he really changed the team. But you look at the underlying profile, and it's like not that impressive.
Yeah,
they were sixth in attacking XG per 90. They were seventh in defensive XG per 90. 11th in box entries allowed. They were sixth in box entries for.
Yeah,
and they were 14th in set piece offense and 8th in set piece defense. Expected threat, 7th going forward, 12th against. Like, this was not a team that was tilting the field and like beating the shit out of everybody Newcastle, Arsenal, and Liverpool were. So Rashford isn't probably going to cool off. And once he did in the second half, it was like Casemiro better score, or like where are the goals coming from? and like I like that about the Ten Hag system, that he gets the midfielders forward and gets them involved, and I think that's generally good. But like, who is the striker? And if it's the Atalanta kid, like I'm just kind of skeptical of him making a jump to the Prem. I don't know that he's ready for that, especially the Prem in the top 4 level. So yeah, I'm going to be a seller. De Gea, as much as everybody slights him, and like he definitely has problems in build up, and that's why he's not going to be with the team anymore, and like whatever. But there is value in his shot stopping, which was really, really good. And they actually conceded more XG than Spurs last year. You would regard Spurs as terrible defense.
That's insane. Yeah.
United conceded more XG. So I just think that this house of cards on United is a little bit fraudulent for them to be minus 140. I think they're the team that gets picked off. And I think if you look at Chelsea, I know.
Yeah, because that's. I was waiting for you to stop talking so I could say, okay, I understand where you're at on Newcastle. Talk to me about Chelsea, because this number is interesting, but their whole everything about them is interesting, because figuring out where to put them must have been very difficult. How to project them must have been very difficult. How much do you put into last season? How much do you put into the season before that? What do you do with Poch? He hasn't been around in a while at a competitive club level team. And so where are you at on them at plus 150? I mean, is that fair? Like, should they be way above Spurs, way above Brighton in terms of their top 4 odds?
I think you have to build in some type of regression for Brighton. And I know they lose McAllister, who, like I said earlier, was by the numbers their most impressive player in terms of like just value add. And the market's felt that way too. But they will, potentially lose a couple of key players here. And I know that they've done this before, and I said this last year, and I was like, well, Brighton had a great year. They'll probably just be like an 8th, 9th, 10th team again. I don't really expect them to be in that elite tier. And they kind of just threw it in my face and got better with De Zerbi. But Brighton, I'm kind of
probably going to lose Caicedo also. So
yeah, exactly. I think you're at the kind of like the peak of the market on Brighton. Like 4-1 to get top 4 is just like crazy when you could have got 4-1 to get top 6 last year.
Yeah.
So I think you're kind of at the peak of the market on Brighton, and I'm not really interested in buying them at this number. But I mean, last year we would have this conversation and we were like, well, like, are Arsenal and Tottenham better than Chelsea? United is clearly way worse than Chelsea.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And now it's like, well, I mean, you just flip United and Chelsea on the basis of one season. Chelsea did clear out some deadwood. The Saudi situation has really helped them.
Yeah.
Because they're buying all of their older not good anymore, not healthy enough players. I think that's notable. I think like there is a super weird Man United vibe with this team from the year before, because remember what happened? They had kind of like the legacy manager who had been there, who had kind of run its course. Not that Tuchel was there that long, but he was there. They toss him and they bring in this new manager. And in the case of Chelsea, it was Potter. In the case of United, it was Ragnick, right? And for like a month, it legitimately worked. Like United was playing really well heading into that Champions League. And then Potter's Chelsea were actually making real improvements and playing as like a plus 4.4 per 90 team. So like a borderline top 4 team for like a 2-month period, but nobody could score. Like the finishing just went god cold. Havertz was horrible. Mount, like nobody could score. And that has a psychological effect to the point where once they were bounced from the Champions League and then Potter got the sack and they bring in the clown Lampard, it's like, well, the players stopped caring. I thought that was very evident. But like Chelsea just gave up. When like the Brentford game at home, when they had like 4 shots, I was like, this team doesn't give a shit. And even against like I think they beat Bournemouth, but it was ugly. And I'm like, well, this team, like they don't care. And that's the same thing that happened with United. Remember, it was like, well, United showed under Ragnick this brief period of
they can play.
They can do this. And then they lost that Champions League tie, and Ragnick was a lame duck, and they knew he wasn't coming back, and they kind of just quit and mailed it in. I think it's the same thing. The Chelsea talent level, with Nkunku in the mix now, with Lukaku back, which I know everybody hates him, but like he was fine in Serie A last year.
I also don't think he'll stay, but that's besides the point. Yeah,
he's in the plans for now, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know how well he fits a Pochettino system because he doesn't really press or do any defensive work, but that'll be interesting. And they have a real manager, and like I'm partial to Poch as a Spurs fan.
He's your guy.
I've seen what he can do. I think PSG was a horrible fit. That's like a Mickey Mouse club that like doesn't really have any culture or plan, just like star building and let them do whatever they want. They're kind of like the LA Clippers of basketball if you're an NBA fan. But like how are we not buying Chelsea at the floor here of the market on them? Now, I thought the market would be a little lower. Like I was like, if I could like 25, 30 to 1, I'm going to buy Chelsea to win the league. And it was 16. I was like, it's not good enough. But in terms of getting top 4, if you think Liverpool, Arsenal, and United have flaws, which I think all of them have different kinds of flaws, then Chelsea is certainly a good buy team. And I like Enzo. I think their defense will take a step forward just because of Poch. And a little bit of belief can go a long way. Some of the numbers on their running was kind of wild. Like they weren't running nearly as much as other teams in the league. That's not going to fly under Mauricio. So I still believe in Poch. I still believe in this collection of talent. Like I'm not a Mudryk guy. I thought he was an overpay, but they still have enough at that club to be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a good pitch. Any other outside teams you like? Not for top 4 necessarily, but like I'm looking at top 6, top 10. I feel like Villa's being a little disrespected. I saw they're minus 200 in the top 10. I'm like, really? To me, they're just like easily a top 10 team, but I could be very wrong there. And then let's go to relegation. Also, I'm curious where you're at.
Man, it's funny because I feel like last year the Premier League was much more easily defined into like tiers.
Yeah.
This year, because all 3 teams from last year stayed up, this relegation race, man, it's going to be wild.
It's going to be really crazy.
The 3 who came up are always threats. So like Burnley, Luton, Sheffield. I don't think anybody expects Luton to stay up. I don't expect that either. But like crazier shit has happened. Huddersfield Town, they're probably the worst team since the Town, and they stayed up in the first year. It was a miracle. It was not really based on any
before getting
pure vibes.
And then would they get like 20 points the next year or something like that?
They do it for 1 year, maybe. I will definitely have them as my worst team projected once I get to the numbers, and I will definitely have Sheffield 19th. The question is, what do you make of Forest? Because if you look at just like who they bought and how that came together, Forest on paper does not have they're not one of the 3 worst teams, but Cooper was there all year, and they played like one of the 3 worst teams over the course of the season. Now, their results were a little bit uneven because they had a bunch of games where they got the shit beat out of them.
Yeah.
And then they had a bunch of like good performances. And so like the aggregates weren't all that good. Like away from home last year, they had 1 win and they scored 11 goals in 19 games. But at home, you put together a season with a positive goal differential, albeit a negative expected goal differential, and you can kind of make a survival method out of it. But I don't know that Forest has improved the defense at all.
Yeah.
And I haven't
so
seen
far they haven't. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that was their thing. Like they went out and bought a lot of these like players that could maybe make their offense better, but they didn't really address the defense. Taiwo had a nice finish to the season. Forest, for me, I think is the next team that I would take.
What about Bournemouth?
They're another interesting case. Now, Bournemouth.
Because I love Bournemouth, but I know the numbers are the numbers. They just were horrendous.
But the shape of the season has to have you encouraged for Bournemouth.
Yeah.
As bad as they were in the first half,
for sure,
and then as competent as the attack was in the second half, makes me think that like they could actually be a team that pushes into like 15th.
Yeah.
Maybe. If you look at, I'm kind of skeptical on how predictive this is, but just like looking at the second half only, how did a team do? Bournemouth was minus 0.6 per 90, which was the 6th worst. Wolves was the worst team in the league in the second half. They are another team. So it's really Wolves and Forest for me, where I'm just like, we sure they shouldn't be, bet to be relegated here? Because I believe in Company and Burnley. I think that the way he's got them playing in a different, the way that they bossed the championship last year, it's kind of similar to, it's not the same level as Fulham from 2 years ago because the underlying numbers aren't that impressive. But when you put up 101 points in the championship, you're going to turn some heads and you're going to make me believe that, like, okay, I need to do something with your power rating, especially with how they did play. Like the XG wasn't all that impressive, but they played from the front so much that I think that there's a natural kind of deflator game state type thing on their numbers. I think Burnley unders will be a good bet early in the season for sure. But yeah, I think Burnley's better than Nottingham Forest. I think they may be better than Wolves. So I'm going to say that
Wolves are definitely a good shout. I mean, I've been betting them to be relegated, and obviously they're still in the league, so not good for me. But they come in, they've just gotten rid of a bunch of starters also, and they haven't bought anyone.
Exactly.
And so I don't know what their financial situation is. I think there's a little like FFP maybe going on there, but they get rid of Neves, they get rid of Collins, they get rid of Cody, they release Moutinho, they, loan out whatever, some other guys. They just like don't have a team right now. They still don't really have a goal scorer. Don't know, they have one center back. So yeah, I'm with you there. I think I'm with you there. There's no one else that seems like a great bet to me, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, where are you at on? I don't think they'll be relegated, but where are you at on Brentford? How do you go about grading a team that, in baseball, there's WAR, there's wins above replacement. You can say, okay, their best player's out, he's worth this many wins, roughly. I can make a sort of guess. How many points is Tony worth to Brentford, who's going to be missing the first 6 months of the season or something like that, and he's just obviously their best player and their focal point?
Yeah, so he's missing half the year, right? So he'll be back for the second half. So he's eligible in January?
Yeah, January.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's about 10 goals because I would project him for about 15 to 20 goals in a season. So we'll roughly shave off half his season production.
Yeah.
10 goals is going to be, in the course of a season, about 25% of what Brentford does in a year on average. Like they're probably going to score about 60 goals. That's generous. So you're looking at like 20% of their offensive production. Now it's not like a 1-for-1, but like who's the backup?
Wissa.
Right. And that's the thing. I am enough a believer in Mbeumo and Wissa for me to say that they can kind of fade this enough
I love Wissa.
Yeah, and like his numbers were fine. And like the thing was about Tony and Brentford was that Tony missed time last year. He didn't play every game, and when he was out there, 0.4 non-penalty goals is the per 90, and 0.31 non-penalty xG. It's not Ivan Tony numbers, but is it worth like a 5 to 10% deduction on their attacking quality? How much is that worth over the course of the season? Like 7 or 8 points, probably.
Right.
So, like I think that you're going to hear us talk a lot this season about Brentford and kind of like how do they keep doing this. I still don't understand how the market was that high on them never caught up to them. Because the first year it made sense. It's like, well, the sample's small. We know that like they're a small club and they haven't really had. So like we're going to regress them back to like they should be like the 16th best team in the league, 17th. And I said last year on this pod, I said yes. I wanted to bet against Brentford, but like the market thinks they suck, and I don't think they suck. I think
I remember this vividly. They were like their point total was like in the 30s.
It was 39.5.
Yeah,
and like how do you not bet the over?
Yeah, ridiculous.
And so we don't have point totals yet, but you can kind of just pull it up based on top 10 odds. The market has them as the 10th best team in the Premier League. Excuse me, 11th best team in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So they have a pretty solid top 8 with City, Arsenal, United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Newcastle, Tottenham, Brighton, Villa, West Ham. And then Brentford is the next of the rest. So they think they're about the 11th best team. Now, I have them at about 12th. And that's without or that's with kind of like a manual adjustment. Like I haven't finalized any of this. That's manual adjustment on kind of like what I think Brentford is now. And a lot of it is because just like there's 6 teams that are automatically below them.
Right. Yeah.
The Fulham, Wolves, Everton, Forest, Burnley, Bournemouth, Sheffield, Luton. That's actually 7 teams where I'm just like, there's no way I can have them better than Brentford. So I think Brentford's like the super boring team this year.
I like the top 10 odds though when you say that, right? They're plus 250. And the next team above them is West Ham at minus 125.
No, thank you. They're in Europe.
Give me a break. That's a huge gap and not really
West Ham
deserved.
was in Europe. They had the second oldest team. They lost their most important
Moyes is still
player.
there.
I think they have a high floor, but like, what are they spending the money on too? Like they need goals, and they can't rely on Antonio again. Scamacca, I'm really not sold on.
Yeah, me neither.
So like Ings, like no thanks. So like they need goals, and how they reinvest this money from Rice is really important because they are, like I said, the second oldest team, and there are some. It's pretty. If you just faded the top 3 oldest teams every year and bet on the 3 younger teams generally from the season before, you would have done decently well. The youngest 3 teams in the league last year: Arsenal, Brentford, Leeds. Now Leeds obviously got relegated, but I think that was kind of an extenuating circumstance. The year before, the oldest teams, Watford and Burnley, both went down. That was notable. And then they had already gotten relegated. They were the oldest team. The next oldest teams, I'm just sorting by like FBref age. Look at that. West Ham. How did they do last year? They were unlucky, but they underperformed relative to expectations. Second oldest team after that, your Reds. So I think there's something to it where like I don't want to back these really old teams. And you saw this in Spain, and we did our Spain pod, and I said, look, like Sevilla was one of the oldest teams in Europe, and they finished in the bottom half of the league. The cliff comes faster than you realize.
Yeah,
for these teams, and when we just say, like, I know it's only a 3-month gap, but it's also a 1-year gap from the start of last season, and so you have to factor in that like players don't just stay static. Like Liverpool has done a really nice job, I think, of turning over the team, getting to the next generation. Arsenal, I mean, they were really shit for like 3 years, relatively, because they made this huge investment in youth, and eventually they bet that it would pop, and it popped last year. Now, can they take the next step? I don't know. But the one thing you could say for Arsenal, they were old in one area. It was central midfield. It was Xhaka and Partey with no depth. And like now they go get Rice.
Jorginho too, yeah.
Exactly. They go get Rice, and it's like, whoa, maybe this is going to work. So it could work. But again,
Brentford top 10. That's
You're
my
in?
favorite bet of the podcast, I
I
think.
think it's perfect. I'll tell a quick
They're
story.
young. They're smart. They're going to make some good purchases. I like Nathan Collins. Flecken is supposed to be really good. They're going to sell Riots somehow, some way.
Yeah.
Wissa's good. Yeah.
There's not a lot of competition there.
Yeah, there's
In that
not.
tier.
I agree with you that you can just rule out 7 teams. So I feel like I'm getting good value. It's basically it's basically Brentford versus West Ham and Palace in like a little 3-team tournament to like can any of these teams finish 10th? And like, yeah, I like my odds.
It was funny. We had like an award show. It was like mostly a joke, but it was fun for our company, the Action Network, on Tuesday night. And the win of the season was our Wonder Goal parlay, which was Brentford, Gladbach, and Nottingham Forest the week before the World Cup, 200-1. And the winning, and I got the mic, and I said, most of the company doesn't really know soccer.
Yeah.
I got the mic, and I said, the beauty of this parlay winning is that the guy who scored the winning goal in the biggest leg was Ivan Toney in stoppage time, who is now suspended for more than 200 violations of the FA gambling policy.
Yeah.
He's in like rehab to like help his gambling addiction.
Yeah.
And then that got a good laugh at everybody.
That's awesome. Amazing.
Who he was. So
good way to end it. Anthony, I know you're doing more stuff than just Wonder Goal, which will be back in a few weeks. What else are you doing? Where can people read your work, hear your work, all that stuff?
Yeah, we're in the thick of baseball season, so grinding away baseball. Sorry about your Mets. My Phils are doing a little better, but yeah, you can find me in the Action Network app on the website. You can find me on Twitter at Anthony Dabbundo, Dabbundo. We're going to be doing some Women's World Cup. It's really hard to project because there's not a lot of data out there, but we're going to do some of that and try to have some fun bets to sweat through for the next month until we get into the Prem. And then, like I said, August, pretty much right around August 1st, we'll probably be doing our full previews. We'll have Alon on to do the draft again. We had fun with that last year. And then we cover all 5 leagues, not as much as the Prem, but we'll also do a pod focusing on the other 4 big leagues, some fun striker movement. I'm excited to see like the Balogun situation, the Openda situation, the Oshamen situation, like Holman too. Like there's all kinds of striker news to be sorted out through the next month. Give me everything.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Peace.